Don't forget that 50-minute clock. I don't see it running yet. Welcome to Wednesday night Bible study. Carmel Church in a continuation, the last in the series of lessons learned from men and women of faith. What does it look like in our lives? How can we expect it? It should be, people should be able to see what you have. When you go in a place, they should say, you're different. Even the demons recognize the power and authority you have in you, because you know that from the book of Acts, when the sons of Sceva was going to cast out the demons, right? They're going to make some money. Said, man, we can start charging for casting out demons. Well, it didn't work out too good for them. Because even the demons said, Jesus we know, Paul we know, but who are you? So you see that power and authority. And what the problem is, we let him tell us that we don't have that power of authority, or that we'll be scared to exercise that power of authority. Well, that all comes with a relationship and faith. So we're going to look at one of my heroes, so to speak, and we're going to go into Numbers in Scripture. I've got E.W. Bullinger here. We're going to look at some numbers that are associated with this hero of faith, and then I have another one that I use. It's Hebrew word pictures and numbers. So we're going to do quite a bit of studying tonight. Also going to give you a history lesson on what was going on during Moses' time. See, because it goes to just how good God is and how he's a master planner. And when I start teaching you tonight, I'll show you that it all started with Abraham, of all people. So let's talk about Moses tonight. Moses is in the Hebrews chapter 11. I call that the faith chapter of the great heroes of faith. So our scriptures we've been using, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen, for by it men of old had gained approval. Men of old, that's where I got this message, men of old. So from Hebrews, we look back on men of old and we see what faith looks like in their lives, and then we should be about the same, or operating in that faith as we go forward. Now that's Hebrews 11, 1 and 2. And then it goes, verse number 5 says, by faith Enoch was taken up, so that he would not see death. And he was not found, because God took him up. For he obtained the witness that before his being taken up, that he was pleasing to God. There's only been two people that I know of in the Bible that did not taste death. One was Enoch and the other was Elijah. Now the Bible records. Now you said Moses, and I'll go ahead and jump ahead here and bring this up. You said Moses. There's a lot of people, including Pastor, makes mention that Moses did not die. But the Bible clearly states that Moses died, and the angel of the Lord fought Satan over the body, or a demon. And he didn't really fight him. He just said, the Lord rebuke you, and that was it. So, but after reading about Moses, and he was on the transfiguration with Elijah. So I always wonder when I read that passage, I said, how did them disciples know what Moses and Elijah looked like? You ever wonder that? How do they know that? Well, I think Jesus probably told them when they got off. They probably said, who was that? Moses. And when they got off, they probably said, Elijah. Oh, okay. So anyway, we're going to look at that. We might see them again. in the first 3.5 years as the two witnesses in the last 7 years of the tribulation. The first 3.5 years, the two witnesses are ministering in Jerusalem, sealing up the 144,000 Jews, and also there has to be a temple on the Temple Mount where the Jews can worship. So, and it has to be sanctified, and it takes 42 months for that to happen. So that's 3.5 years on a 360-day calendar. But I don't know about you, but I'm going to watch it from a safe distance. Now, God must believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of those that diligently seek Him. That's Hebrews 11, 5 through 6. Now, verse number 23, let's look at Moses. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents because they saw he was a beautiful child. And they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he grew up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to endure ill treatment with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. Considering the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt. We're going to see that when we look at Moses tonight. For he was looking to the reward. By faith he left Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is unseen. Now I want you to pay close attention to number 27, because he saw God face to face. Now he's the only person I know that did that and was alive in his body. So he says he saw the unseen, which he saw God face to face. Now it didn't start out that way, but it ended up that way, because we know he asked God to show me. I want to see you, God. And he said, no, you can't see me. You're not ready. He said, I'm going to hide you in a cleft of rock, and I'm going to walk by, and I'm going to put my hand over you, and then you can see my backside and all the glory that goes with me. Well, then towards the end of his life, we see that Moses was now face to face. So that faith, that relationship, it developed into where he saw God face to face. By faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of the blood, so that he who destroyed the firstborn would not touch them. By faith they passed through the Red Sea as though they were passing through from dry land. And the Egyptians, when they attempted it, were drowned. Hebrews 11, 23 through 39. Now let's get into Moses and get into our dot points. Let's go, if you got your Bibles, Exodus 2. And we're going to start with verse 11. Now I'm going to jump around. So I'm going to go forward and then I'm going to go backward. So y'all just write good and keep up with me. So it's Exodus 2, 11 through 14. Now it came about in those days when Moses had grown up, okay, that he went out to his brethren, which were the Jews. We called them Jews. They were Hebrews or whatever. But went out to his brethren and looked on their labors, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way, and when he saw there was no one around, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So here we go. We see that the deliverer is trying to go forward in his own justice. But it's not time yet, as you'll see here. It says, he went out the next day, and behold, 2 Hebrews were fighting with each other. And he said to the offender, why are you striking your companion? But he said, who made you a prince or a judge over us? But you're going to see God makes him a prince and a judge over them after in a little while. And he says, are you intending to kill me as you killed the Egyptians? Well, now he knew he was in trouble because the cat was out of the bag. Then Moses was afraid and said, surely this matter has become known. Yeah, you think? So your first dot point, faith, the relationship, does not get ahead of God. Sometimes we have ministers, we have people, we hear the word, we rejoice with gladness, and then we take off without hearing the word go. Sometimes we have to wait on God to finish, okay? I'll use my own example here. I used it last week because the Lord told me I'm going to be teaching Revelations, but he didn't say when. So what did I have to do? I had to get ready. I had to prepare. Yes? So you're going to see as we go forward that you might get, he shows Moses the overall view, but Moses had to walk it out by faith. So your first dot point is faith, the relationship, does not get ahead of God. He waits, or we should wait until we hear the word go. Now's the time, go. All right? Pastor talks about when God called him in South Africa, it was years before he heard the word go. When Pharaoh, and you'll see why in a minute, because you'll see the mastery of our Father having to put people and places in place so that when Moses got ready, when God was ready and Moses was ready, Moses wasn't ready. He's only 40 years old. I say only, but he's 40 years old at this time. He's not ready. God knows he's not ready. So when Pharaoh heard of this matter, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from the presence of Pharaoh and settled in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now, let's look at Midian, because Midian is an interesting. Why did he go to Midian? Let me get my papers out here. Well, did you know the Midianites were direct descendants of Abraham? Abraham and his third wife, Keturah, had 6 sons: Zimran, Josheb, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shush. Through these sons, Abraham became the prodigy of several nations and tribes that would play significant roles in biblical and ancient history. Now, when we think of Abraham and Sarah, right? And we think of the Hebrew nation. But if you'll remember, God said, look at the stars, Abraham. I'm going to make you a father of many nations, not just one nation. So let's look at that. Let me get down to Midian. I got all this stuff. Midian. So the Midianites descended from Midian, Abraham's and Zipporah's son. Played a prominent role in biblical narrative. They settled in the northwestern Arabian Peninsula near the Gulf of Aqaba. Now, if you look at the children of Israel and you look at their path out, that's in the southern, what we call the southern part of Saudi Arabia today. Okay? Now, that is where the mountain of God is, which we know as Mount Sinai. Yes? And they have found that mountain, and it is exactly as described in the Bible as being black on top because of the fire came down, and it has the split rock where the water came out. And you can go online and take the tour, right? And they have the cave of Moses, Moshe, they call him. So in that area, and they have the bitter springs on the way to the mountain. So that is actually in southern Arabia, what we call southern Arabia. Now, if you'll notice that Paul said, he spent 14 years, he said, I came out of Arabia with all of this revelation and knowledge. Well, a lot of scholars believe that he went to the Mount Sinai to seek God, to see, okay, I've been a Jew all my life. Now what do I do? What is this all about? So the Midianites are mostly famous, known for their interaction with Moses. He fled to Midian and married Zipporah, the daughter of Jethro, the priest of Midian. The Midianites were both allies and adversaries of Israel. During the wilderness period, they became hostile to Israel, leading to their defeat under Moses' leadership. We see that in Numbers 31, 1 through 12. Despite this conflict, Jethro, a Midianite priest, played a significant role in advising Moses on leadership. The Midianite territory was known for its wealth and trade, including the transportation goods such as spices, gold, precious stones. Genesis 37:28 records the Midianite traders were involved in selling Joseph to the Egyptians, which started the Hebrew people. So you see, God's a big God, and he has a lot of plans, intricate plans, coming together all the way back to Abraham, preparing Moses and his people to go into the promised land. The Midianite territory was known for its wealth trade, including transportation, goods, spices, gold, precious. We see that in Genesis 37:28. So you see, God does a lot of things, has to get a lot of things in place. So he might tell, like Moses, it takes another 40 years for Moses to get ready to go. It takes 40 years to get Egypt out of Moses. So now he's what? Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me the history, because why did Sarah have to get an Egyptian?
I don't have time to tell you the history. I'm just telling. Sarah died and Abraham married Keturah. Okay. Yeah, I sent the thing. So yeah, I just learned all this myself. So I just wondered why. Because when I was studying this, so then Pharaoh heard about it, and he said, okay, Moses has got to go because he murdered an Egyptian. So your number 2 point, faith, the relationship, does not look at the circumstances around us. So you may be facing odds that you say, there's no way that I can do this. There's no way this will work. I cannot see a way. But you see, as I just said, all these years, God was getting the Midianites ready to receive Moses. And they all come out of Abraham. So let's look at Exodus 3, 8 and 9 now. So I have come down to deliver. Now, this is on the mountain. Now, there's something else that happened on this mountain that it's the first time. God names himself. I am. That's the first time we see the word I am. I am whatever you need. So then if you fast forward to the New Testament, in the book of John, Jesus uses those same words, I am, 7 times. 7 is a number of perfection. So you see, Jesus carries that same I am over into the New Testament. So this is the first time that we have a name for God in the Bible, where he calls himself I am. And then he says to Moses, verse 8, chapter 3, verse 8, so I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians. He said, I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from the land to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hittites, and Jebusites. So you see, that's why I said faith does not look at the circumstances around us. Faith trusts God. Circumstances in your mind can look overwhelming. So when they get there, they have all of these people that they have to deal with because it's their land, including the Canaanites themselves. Now behold, the cry of the son, and that's another thing. Abraham, Jesus, I believe it's Jesus. It says angel, but I believe it was Jesus, took Abraham out away from his tents and stuff, and he said, hey, look, as far as you can see, he said, all this land is going to be your descendants. But he said, not now. Not now. Well, that was the land of the Canaanites. And then he tells them, because the cup of iniquity for the Canaanites has not yet filled. And it took almost, for about 450 years for that to happen. Because it says in the Bible, your descendants are going to wander for 450 years. So if you start that clock there and you go to when Moses and them entered the promised land, 450 years. So see, God's a big God. He already's been there, prepared tomorrow for you. All we have to do is get up and walk in it. Now behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me. Furthermore, I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians are opposing them. Now there's one thing about God. God sent his people, the Israelites, the Hebrews, however you want to call them. He dispersed them because they did, right? He says, I'm going to send you among the nations. I did it. But what he doesn't like is oppression of his people when they get there. Now what you're going to see from now on is that every one of those countries that oppressed Israel, we see that in the judgment of the nations. When Jesus comes back, he sets them apart. Goat nations to his left, she nations to the right. In other words, they're going to be judged, those nations, even though they didn't have anything to do with them at the time. Those nations, like Germany, are going to be judged on how they treated the Jewish people when God sent them out. Because he says, I'm going to disperse you from the land because you didn't keep my Shemitahs 7 years. And then he says, but I want you to be blessed there. I want you to prosper. I want you to do good. Okay? Point number 3. Faith, the relationship, will give you the ability that you thought was impossible to have. We see that in Exodus 3:10 through 12. Therefore, God says, come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh. Now watch this. Here's the plan, but not the details of the plan. Now you have to remember, 40 years, he's in training as an Egyptian, right? He would have learned everything the Egyptian elite would have learned. He would have been trained militarily. He would have been trained just like one of those. So for 40 years, he's in training, and then he takes him to the desert, and it's 40 years he's in the desert as a shepherd. Now, it's key as a shepherd, because a shepherd learns how to take care of sheep. And we're constantly, in the Christian, we are the sheep, and we have a great shepherd, yes? So, but Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, certainly I will be with you, and this shall be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God at this mountain. What mountain is that? Mount Sinai. Because they went straight there, right? Yes. And you're gonna see later that it's actually just a 3-day journey from Egypt to Mount Sinai. But Israel messed up, and they went around the mountain a couple of times. So now let's look. So you have 40. He was 40 years of age when he left. He's 40 years in the desert, and he's 40 years with the children of Israel, and he's 120 when he dies. Okay? So let's look at the number 40. Where's my number 40? Oh, significance of 120. Now he's 120. In Jewish numerology, particular through the concept of the number 120 holds significant meaning. It is often associated with the divine timing and transition between the physical to the spiritual, because he dies at 120. The number 120 appears multiple times in the Bible, emphasizing its importance. Genesis 6:3, God states that man's days shall be 120 days, 120 years, marking a period for repentance. Moses lived to be 120 years old, symbolizing the end of an era and the transition to new beginnings for the Israelite people. Acts 1:15, Jesus' ascension, 120 disciples gathered in the upper room, right? All multiples of what? 40. The number 120 can symbolize divine appointment time. It signifies a period of waiting and preparation for significant events. Spiritual transition. It marks the shift from the age of the flesh to the age of the spirit, as seen in various biblical concepts. The number 120 is linked to themes of strength, obedience, and divine purpose, just like Moses. It is also seen in the context of the Jewish calendar and festivals, reinforcing its significance in both spiritual and communal life. Now, the number 40. I'll go to my other book. I hope I got it. Yeah. Now, you have to be careful, okay? Because you can get on Christian sites that take this number stuff way too far. So I keep it with the Hebraic, and I keep it with the old Hebraic. I don't mess with the new Hebraic language, because there's a lot of words that are added, because they need it as we add to our vocabulary, right? But in the beginning, that's where I try to keep my focus on that. So the number 40, now you got to remember there's 3 of them, yes? So you had the first 40, then you had the second 40 as a shepherd, and then the last 40 was here. So we had 3 times 3, and we're going to look at the number 3. All of this fits prophetically with Moses. The 40 means trials, probation, chastisement, but not judgment. God chastises whom he what? Loves. Yes? Action of grace resulting in revival, magnified renewal, an extended period of rule or dominion. Now, Jesus was in the wilderness for how many days? 40 days. So he's in there for trials. He's in probation, chastisement, but not judgment. But the result was his what? Action of grace, resulting in revival when he passed the test. Yes? So you see the number 40 all through the Old Testament, and it carries on through the New Testament. Well, you see 3 sets of 40. So the number 3, what does the number 3 mean? Well, let's look. This is my numbers in Scripture by E.W. Bollinger, quite large. 3. 3 is the first of 4 perfect numbers. 3 denotes divine perfection. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. 3. Yes? So 3 denotes divine perfection. So Moses' 3 40s would be, at the end of it was divine perfection. 3 times. So the other numbers are 7. We see 7 like crazy in the book of Revelations, don't we? That's the main number of book of Revelations is 7. Well, 7 denotes spiritual perfection. So what? God made the world in 6 days, and then on the 7th, he what? He rested. Why? Because he said it is good. Oh my gosh, it's only 17 minutes left. I'm only on point 3. Okay, I got to get moving. 10, I started it, I got to finish it. 10 denotes ordinal perfect, Ordinal, or something. Yeah, that. And then 12 denotes governmental perfection. How many disciples did Jesus have? 12. When you get to the book of Revelation, there are how many elders? 24, 2 sets of 12. So you see, numbers are very, very significant in the Bible. But you have to be careful. I'm just saying. You got to know where you're looking. Now, let me get back to my... Let's see, man, I can't believe I've been up here that much already. Did you speed forward on that clock? Jeez. Okay, so I'm going to skip all 40s. I've done number 3. Oh, look at me go. Number 4. Oh, I did say, Moses was also on Mount Sinai on 2 separate occasions for 40 days and 40 nights. Okay? 40. 40 is key. In order to receive God's law, he also sent spies for 40 days to investigate the land. God promised the Israelites to an inheritance. We find that in Numbers 13:25 and Numbers 14:34 is your reference scriptures. Now, number 4, faith, a relationship, gives us the ability to be patient and long-suffering. See, we have to wait on him. He gives us the plan, but then we have to wait for the details. See, it took 40 years to get Egypt out of Moses. So he had to be patient. He learned to be a shepherd in the wilderness. Faith, a relationship, number 5, will let you know what's coming. Watch this. This is Exodus 3, 18 through 22. God says, they will pay heed to what you say, and you with the elders of Israel will come to the king of Egypt, and you will say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us, so now please, let us go 3-day journey into the wilderness that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Okay? God's telling him God's telling him the exact plan, but not all the details. He said, this is your first step. You're going to go, and you're going to go before Pharaoh, and this is how you do it. You say please, say pretty please if it makes a difference. But watch this. But I know the king of Egypt will not permit you to go except under compulsion. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my miracles, which I shall do in the midst of it. The plagues. And then we see the plagues. I will grant this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and it shall be that when you go, you will not go empty-handed. Now watch what he says. He said, but every woman, y'all should be shouting, shall go ask her neighbor, and the woman who lives in, doesn't say nothing about men. And the woman who lives in her house will give you articles of silver, articles of gold, clothing, and you will put them on your sons and your daughters. Thus you will plunder the Egyptians when you leave. Number 6, faith, the relationship, is where our prosperity rests. God said, come close to me and I'll come close to you. James 4:8. Lack of time, I won't read it. So, faith is how we obtain the goodness of God. See, God says, okay, you worked, well, it's actually 240 years if you do the numbers. So now I'm going to pay this generation back for all the hard labor y'all have done. And you'll see that if you read on in the account, you see when they got to Mount Sinai, this is the crazy stuff that built the calf. Man's thing to worship. Now the calf is interesting if you read it from a Jewish perspective. We think of it as an idol, and it was. But from their perspective, if you read about the calf in my Jewish websites that I go to, there's about four of them I trust, 4 or 5 of them. It's interesting reading, just saying. Jeremiah 29:12 through 13 says, then you shall call upon me, and you will come and pray to me, and I will hear you and heed you. So he's always ready to listen to us. That's what faith is, a relationship with him. Then you will seek me, inquire for, and require me as vital necessity, and find me when you search for me with all your heart. Amen? Number 7, point 7. Faith, a relationship, will give you power and authority to carry out God's will in the earth in your calling. So some of us try to get out of our heart and try to get into your mind, and you try to figure this out. What does this look like? How's it going to work? Exactly like I just read Moses did. Who am I? Who am I to go before Pharaoh? And God said, no, just settle down. We're going to work it out. So Exodus 4:2-5, the Lord said to him, hey, Moses, what is in your hand? And he set a staff. Now this staff is a very interesting staff from a Jewish perspective. Now the Bible just calls it a staff, and I don't know if from their oral tradition I read about this staff. It's not no ordinary staff. But maybe I'll get to it, maybe I won't. But it was. I sent it to Pastor P.F. I said, man, look at this. This is interesting. But it's not in the Bible, but they believe it because it's part of their oral tradition that they got from Moses that they finally wrote down. Because they said, look, we're losing this oral tradition. Right? So they said, we better start writing this stuff down. And they did. Lord said to him, what's in your hand? He said, a staff. Then he said, throw it on the ground. So he threw it on the ground and it became a serpent, not a snake. This is different from a snake. This is a serpent. This is a big dude. Okay? I know Charlton Heston playing Moses back in the day, throws it down, becomes a snake, eats up the other snake. No, this is a serpent. This thing is big and ugly. So he threw it on the ground and became a serpent, and Moses fled from it. Think Moses is going to run from a little snake? No. He's used to dealing with snakes. He's a shepherd. No, serpent. Big, big, big. Think big. But then the Lord said, I guess after he got his attention, when he kind of stopped running, right? But then the Lord said, stretch out your hand and grasp his tail. Now that's where me and him might have had a problem. So he stretched out his hand and caught it. And it became a staff again. That they may believe the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you. This is your sign. 7 minutes. Y'all want to hear about the staff? You sure? Yep. All right. Now this is what they teach. I get this from CHABAD, Chabad.org. Okay, and my other 4 confirm this, because I read something, I say, yeah, that sounds far-fetched. But then you go to the others and they're the same. So here it is. The staff was ancient even in Moses' time. According to tradition, that's oral tradition, it was one of the 10 miraculous phenomenon God created in the twilight hour as Shabbat entered on the 6th day of creation. The staff's uniqueness is first mentioned in the Mishpah, the first compilation of the oral law, authored by Rabbi Yehuda. Together, they constitute the Talmud. Y'all ever heard Talmud? I've talked about Talmud. I have a book on the Talmud. Okay, it's the ancient writings of the Jewish people. I go there to research. I do research. I read. Because, you know, in the Old Testament, there's not a lot of information, right? They just makes a statement and then it moves on. I want to know what was going on. Why did you make that statement? Just me. That staff, which was created at the twilight, was delivered to the first man out of the Garden of Eden. Who was that? Adam. Adam delivered it to Enoch, and Enoch delivered it to Noah. You know Noah had a staff? Yes. It's in the Bible. And Noah to Shem. Shem passed it on to Abraham. Remember Abraham's staff? Abraham to Isaac. Isaac to Jacob. Jacob brought it down to Egypt and passed it on to his son Joseph. And when Joseph died, and they had pillaged his household goods, it was placed in the palace of Pharaoh. And Jethro was one of the magicians of Egypt at one time. And he saw the staff and the letters which were upon it, because they're written in Hebrew on the staff. And he desired it in his heart, and he took it and brought it and planted it in the midst of the garden in his house. No one was able to approach it anymore. When Moses came to the house, he went into Jethro's garden and saw the staff and read the letters which were upon it, and he put forth his hand and took it. Jethro watched Moses and said, "This one in the future will redeem Israel and Egypt." Therefore he gave him Zipporah, his daughter, to be his wife. Tradition says, some traditions, now I could only find this on one side. Some traditions say that it was crafted from sapphires. It had Hebrew inscriptions on it. Far from being an ordinary stick, Moses' staff was inscribed with several powerful Hebrew words. These included God's inevitable four-letter name, an acronym for the 10 plagues. It was written on the staff. And the names of the patriarchs, matriarchs, in the 12 tribes. It first belonged to Adam. According to the Midrash, the staff had impressive providence, beginning with Adam, the first human. It was passed down to Enoch, then to Noah, Shem, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob carried it across the Jordan River on his return from Laban's house, and later passed it to his son Joseph. Others say it was also used by Jacob and Judah. It ended up in Jethro's garden. I already read that. It turned into a snake, not a snake, but a serpent twice. The staff's miraculous nature first appears in the Torah when God gives Moses 3 signs to prove the mission to the Israelites. 3. What did I say? Divine ordinance. Divine perfection. Imprint. The first sign was that the sign would be transformed into a serpent when tossed on the ground, and then back into a staff when Moses picked up. Later, Aaron performed the same miracle before Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh's sorcerers replicated it. And Aaron's staff swaddled, that's the same staff, swaddled the other staffs, a symbol of God's absolute power and force over impurity. See, I find it interesting that I know God can do it, right? I know that God, you throw down this staff, and I know he can do it. But Pharaoh's conjurers duplicated it, only with less power. It was central to the 10 plagues. I'm running out of time. Here we go. Some say Aaron used his own. It was used to split the sea, Red Sea. Well, you remember when he held it up? He hit the sea and poof, it split. And then they went across on dry land 56 seconds. Moses held it during the Battle of Amalek. Remember that? Took people to hold his hands up. They get tired. He'd let them down, they'd lose. And then they had to pick them back up. Aaron was on one side, and I forget who was on the other side. But he had his staff with him. When the Amaleks attacked the Israelites, Moses stood on his heel holding his hands aloft. He was also holding the staff. As long as the staff was raised, the Israelites prepared prevailed in battle. Number 11, it brought forth water from the rock. Remember that? Touched the rock. Boom. I just talked about that split rock. You can go online and see that split rock. Twice in the desert. It was passed down to King David. The staff didn't disappear after Moses passing it, was passed down through the generations, eventually reached King David. Now here's where we get interesting. It was hidden before the temple's destruction. All right? Now this is the Babylonian destruction. Before the temple was destroyed, the staff was hidden, along with other sacred objects, according to one tradition. It resides in the same secret place as the Holy Ark and other treasures at the tabernacle. Okay? Now, in order for the Jews to have a temple and a place to worship, they have to have a Holy of Holies, and in that Holy of Holies, there has to be the Ark of the Covenant. So I won't be here. I'll be watching from above, but it's going to be interesting if that staff is in there or not. It will return in the ultimate redemption, according to the Jews. According to tradition, Moses' staff will reappear in the final redemption and be given to, we call him Jesus. And we may see this incredible event very soon. Now, this is what they say. All right? Did you get something out of tonight?
Yeah.
Maybe I went too fast. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make sure I got all my dot points. Probably did. Okay. Y'all have a good night. Rest of the night. Thank all the ladies for coming.